start streaming, start recording, and we're live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's Amy Locke. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee meeting today. I'm hoping that everybody is signed in. I see we're kind of a small group tonight, but maybe some of that is due to the rain. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to make a comment? Is there anybody here from the public? Hi.
Hi, I'm a master's in city planning student at MIT. So I was interested in transportation, so I thought I'd show up and see what it's all about.
Okay,
Great.
I'm so glad that you're here. What is your name?
I'm Kathleen.
Kathleen, I'm Amy, and I'm glad that you're here. Tonight's a little bit of a light night, but I hope that you'll come some other evenings too.
Can I ask her a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you working on at MIT?
I'm focusing in environmental policy and negotiation. So looking at transboundary water disputes and how different negotiations look like around the world. So when you have two countries fighting over a body of water or a river basin, maybe with different cultural beliefs, different access to data and technology, yet they need to solve the water problem that they have. So it's like how do you look at that?
Tremendous negotiation skills.
It is. So excited to be there and working on that.
Oh, well, please come again and update us on how things are going.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's interesting too about how you have to remember that the cultural differences can really jam up something that may not actually be jammed up.
Absolutely.
So that must be fascinating work.
It is.
And where did you get your undergrad?
Also at MIT. I'm actually doing my bachelor's and my master's simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything interesting to tell us tonight?
I'm just excited to be here and hear more about transportation.
Great, thank you. And you're always welcome.
Thank you.
Did everybody see, shall we do a subcommittee report? Anybody here to do the capital investment and finance report?
Well, Brian's going to be late himself at 5:30, so I just assume wait until he comes because he took notes of the meeting.
Great. And was anybody at the marketing, communications, and operations meeting that could make a report? Craig is unable to attend.
I got the weeks mixed up, so don't
I was there, but I don't
missed it.
remember what we talked about.
Well,
the unintentional missing it.
yeah, well, I was there. It was a free-ranging conversation because let's just say the co-chairs didn't handle the ball properly with the meetings. There was no agenda. We did talk about.
Was there an agenda that went out for that? I didn't remember seeing
There was
one.
not. There was not an agenda. So one of the co-chairs is MIA, and the other one, in recognition of his lack of commitment to his role, is in the process of advocating it, and so Carl Seglum may take it. If he shows up, he will tell us tonight whether he's going to take it or not. So that's the deal. I mean, Andy he's just overextended. It's one of the risks that you take when you take a student, because on one hand, we want the young, younger folks represented on the rock, but at the same time, especially if they're students, they tend to be overextended. So it certainly has me kind of reevaluating the whole notion of going for diversity versus commitment, because I think it'll do a little good, to have a diverse committee, but if they don't show up, what good does it do? Versus, people who are committed to doing it, and even if you lose your diversity, at least you have people who are, committed in doing the work. So,
because I've noticed that just to build on that a little bit, I've noticed that our meeting numbers are not as high as other times. And I don't know, I've noticed that sometimes like when I first started, the meetings were really well attended, and then some people that started when I did, I haven't seen them.
Right.
And I don't know if they're here or not.
Right. Well, I can tell you on one note, Chris Haight, he resigned. He had health issues. So back in June, his doctor told him that he needed to cut back on things. And so since then, his job has changed. So he's feeling overwhelmed at work, and he has some stuff going on in his personal life. So he sent a letter of resignation to me, and I told him that was sufficient, and then said, take care of yourself. If you want to be reinstated, write back to us, and if there's an opening, I'm sure we would look for it. Because he was clearly someone, he was clearly someone, who he was committed and worked hard.
Yeah.
He did that presentation on Silver Line. He really knew stuff, and so one way or another, I will keep in touch with him
Right.
about stuff. And so even if he's not a formal member, we can get input from him. So that's one that is removing himself from the situation
Right.
in a very responsible way, as opposed to the others who knows.
Okay.
And we'll give them more time. Like you said, maybe reevaluate, the way we go about, pulling in new members
Yeah, because
next
that's
time.
actually on my list of things to talk about on our discussion for planning going forward. And I guess I shouldn't have interrupted you because we were into the marketing.
Well, that was partly it, because like I said, there was no agenda because both co-chairs, we didn't do anything with respect to organizing the meeting. So it's like one thing not to be there, it's another thing not to organize your meeting. So in the past, there's been a philosophical discussion about how meetings should be run. There are those who feel that meetings don't necessarily need to be organized. In which case, not having an agenda fits in with that. But then if you're not going to have an agenda and you don't show up, then that's not a philosophical discussion or a philosophical take on how you run a meeting. That's just ineffective
Right.
leadership of your group. And so that's what we have in that group right
So
now.
there were no
yeah.
leaders for that group then?
No. Craig showed up late, and at the point, when he was challenged me on the fact that there was no agenda, he says yes to me, and I readily admit, that I am an awful co-chair. That's always a quote,
I actually heard him saying that when you said that.
Yeah, so he's willing to give up that position, and so Carl is considering it, so we'll see. And so there we are with that. And so I'm trying to remember what we talked about.
We had actually a very long discussion about bus service. I
Right.
remember back and forth, the guy from CTPS was there, Rob, you were there too,
Yeah.
at marketing. So it ended up being, because I love discussion about bus service.
Sure.
So
Right.
I was very happy, actually, that we got to air some things.
Because I think of you now all the time. I mentioned this at the last meeting when I see buses having to replace train service, whether it's planned or unplanned, and now I think of you, and I think of you because I recognize that this could very well be impacting other service because of the shuttle buses, and so I never thought of that before.
Well, sometimes they actually pay, I think unplanned, not so much, but planned, they actually pay. Sometimes you get on this bus that has cushioned seats and.
Oh, I've been on those, yeah.
So, the planned ones, that's usually not an issue. But what choice do they have? I mean, there's so many people have to get from A to B.
Right.
And, so what they usually do is take the buses that run frequently, but that impacts those of us who take the 39 and
Right.
the 39 so much because they're articulated, but other key bus routes that have, I hope not the 111, they never take it.
You've actually,
They do?
what is the statistic that I heard, like, a week or two ago was the first week that there were no drop trips on the 111.
Oh, wow.
And as far as Dave Carney could possibly remember,
That's
just going back a long while.
Wow.
Yeah, like decades perhaps, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So what contributed to that positive occurrence?
Well, updated run times, so enough recovery time for
Right.
buses to, for drivers to end their trip if they're running late, to start their next trips on time, and hiring new operators
Yeah.
to cover.
Yeah.
That has certainly been a major improvement. Just reducing the number of drop trips.
Rob, what number are you and how many have been hired at this point?
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
It's supposed to be 35 operators that are going specifically for cover, and where they stand on that, I don't know exactly.
And it was staggered too, if I remember, wasn't it a bit staggered, the hires?
The hires that are coming in for runtime improvements are staggered.
Okay.
I believe they're trying to hire as quickly as possible the drivers that can come in for cover.
Okay.
That's my understanding. And then I think also on the 111, just a focus on the 111 and trying not to drop trips.
Yeah, right, that's good. That's good. So had the percentage from drop trips been going down recently? And this was, let me rephrase that. How has the trend on drop trips been for the 111, like over the last 2 months?
It's been down significantly.
Okay.
I mean, a significant improvement, I should say.
So what has it been hovering at, or trending towards?
I think the last statistics that I saw was about 2% of trips.
And it's down from?
I think last September it was in the mid-teens.
All right. That's hefty. Okay. Cool. Nice. So has there been any improvement in service as a result? I mean, would the typical rider notice?
I would hope so.
Okay.
I mean, I think the one thing that riders could complain about, and we've seen a couple of complaints coming in, is we had to cut back the frequency of trips in the peaks because of updated run times and no resources to add to the peaks. So there's some crowding that's undoubtedly going on that's helped by the fact that we are running all trips, which we weren't doing previously. But there are fewer scheduled trips that are out there now.
Right.
So there could be some instances, as we fully expected, of some crowding.
Could you just, as someone who's not as familiar with the bus numbers, what is the 111 route?
It's the Haymarket to Chelsea to Revere.
Okay.
Runs right up through, goes over the Tobin Bridge, the North Washington Bridge. Those two bridges that are going to soon be, if not, they haven't already started construction for something like 4 to 5 years. So that was really one of the reasons, along with the 111 being one of the highest ridership bus routes that we have in a very a community that we certainly want to prioritize. So that, but knowing that those construction projects were coming, that certainly was reason enough to take a look at the 111, because in as much as we've added runtime, actually padded runtime and minimum layover, we're kind of waiting with bated breath to see what the impact of the Tobin and the North Washington Bridge construction is going to be.
So I guess I'm a little concerned though, because if the reason you're not having drop trips because you reduced your number of trips, and as a result we might have some crowding, overall it's not. I mean, to the extent that not having good drop trips is a good thing, is being mitigated by the lack of trips, and so I mean, is it we took away trips because we just don't have the resources for it? I see. So if we had the resources, we could put more trips in there. All right, so.
Because the resources that we got were manpower resources, but we didn't have any additional vehicle resources.
Oh, well, the buses.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it an equipment or an operator?
In this case, it's an equipment constraint. So we put that manpower where we do have vehicle capacity to put the operators, which is in the off-peaks. Where certainly on the 111, there's plenty of demand on the shoulders of the peaks and in the midday and everything there too. So it's not like it's going to be wasted.
Right.
But we literally don't have any more vehicles to operate during the peaks.
And is that because you can't put any more vehicles in the garage, or you have space in the garage, but you don't have the vehicles to go into the empty spaces in the garage?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't know if I fully have the answer to it. I mean, I would surmise that it's a vehicle constraint, that if it's both. It really is.
Okay,
There's capacity constraint in the garages,
right,
in as much as they are
right,
limited on the number of vehicles that they actually have available.
the vehicle constraint is much easier to solve than garage capacity constraint. You know, if you're full up in your garage, then we can get on the bus if we want, and I think you're good, all right, okay.
When you're getting the complaints of the crowding, are people still able to get on the buses?
I mean, anecdotally, we hear some reports. I mean, I've only gotten a couple of complaints. I haven't heard anybody saying that they are unable to get on a bus, but that's just anecdotally.
Okay.
I will tell you, I'm on the 39 every day, and usually on the weekends, bus services are very good, and it's very crowded, and sometimes the bus driver will pass by. It doesn't mean that there isn't another bus coming, because if I'm on the crowded bus, I can't tell if there's another bus behind us. And lots of times at Forest Hills, the driver has to open all the doors and people get on both front and back, because there's so many people waiting, the schedule will be totally thrown off. And this is mostly during rush hour, both either AM or PM. So there are issues, and I think maybe some of that will be solved with, you know, everybody has to get on and scan and whatever when the AFC 2 whatever it is comes along.
Yeah.
But there's a problem now. I don't know, especially if they're using any data from the machine as a count. They've really got to use the CTPS people to go out and count, because obviously the fare box is not counting people.
And we have passenger counters. That
Yes.
it varies by.
No, I
fleet.
know that, but it's obviously not every day, every trip. You sample.
Well,
Yeah.
on some garages, the 39 is every single trip well, actually not the 39, but the other bus routes in the out of the Arbor garage, for instance, we have 100% coverage on those bus routes. And
Yeah, but they're not crowded to like 50 people waiting to go.
32 is definitely.
You know more than I do.
Well, from my experience with the 111, and I was taking it around rush hour in the evening, I can guarantee you, people are not getting, there are people left at the station, and it's just so many people waiting there, and so you wait until the next bus comes, and sometimes it's punched out, the next bus isn't that far away, but of course, with that first bus being jammed, it makes, especially getting off, harder to a certain extent. Although a lot of people do get off at one stop, kind of halfway through the route, right?
Bellingham Square.
Yeah.
Which we have a short-term variant
Right,
that serves
right.
that demand.
Right. Yeah.
But I would say, last year at this time, we were seeing 30-minute, 40-minute, sometimes even higher reports of gaps in service at Haymarket on the 111. And that is entirely due to drop trips. Just 2 drop trips, 3 drop trips in a row, and suddenly you get a huge gap in service. Hopefully that should not be happening anymore. I mean, there will undoubtedly be bunching. There will undoubtedly, that'll happen. But we should not see substantial gaps in service the way that we did a year ago.
And you didn't drop 30% of your trips,
I mean, when I
no,
cite.
what I'm saying, I didn't drop, you didn't change the times of the trips.
Reduce the number of trips.
So you didn't reduce the number of trips at 30%.
No.
So it's not like it's right where you were. I mean, you reduced it. To what extent, I don't know, but then.
Let's find out to what extent, what percentage?
I don't know. I could certainly look that up.
Okay, no, just.
Yeah.
But it's not a huge percentage.
Yeah, especially if it's a busy road. So then there's been both improvement and reduced trips, and that's led to a really positive result.
I think so.
Yeah.
So you say there's still bus bunching? So what's the cause of bus bunching?
Variability in traffic.
Traffic there, all right, because it'd be that to me, and then a combination of still filling up that bus, at Haymarket, because we have a full bus, and then a not so full bus behind it, the one behind is going to catch up, and so to the extent you could even out the load, at the origin, you would decrease your chances of getting bunchy due to just passengers getting on and getting off. So, all right, thanks.
So is there anything else anybody wanted to mention from the marketing communications meeting about anything else with the bus routes or anything? You know, at one point I remember being at one of the marketing meetings and we were talking about having, you know, whether or not it would be possible to have some sort of cute slogan or a little commercial or ad or something to show people like that we're part of the problem, the riders are part of the problem on getting people in and out and keeping trips on time, at least for the subways. And I've noticed, I know a couple of different places in Canada now have stars doing, have celebrities doing little catchphrases, but I can't remember who right now.
Seth Rogen did it in British Columbia.
Okay. And, you know, whether or not that's working, but it is, you know, something that I still think that should be explored. Is there a way to educate the riders so that we can get in and out? Most people are good now about realizing let the people off first.
No, they aren't, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, that's not true.
Really?
Oh yeah, people get on all the way up to the driver and all of a sudden this handicapped person, not severely handicapped, not with a wheelchair, but with a cane or something, and then everybody's gotta get off. So they don't look in the bus to see who's trying to get off.
Right.
And you can see, because the windows are big enough, you can see that somebody is trying to get off. So I think that's a great idea about celebrities. I think if we could get David Ortiz to do them, people
Why
would.
not?
People would do.
They would do that. Actually, when I was speaking earlier, forgive me, because I was thinking in terms of the train, not in terms of the buses.
Yeah.
The buses, all of a sudden, there's still people coming, you're right. But how, you know, how can we approach somebody to do this for free for the T is the problem.
Well, we have to get the T's buy-in.
Right. And is that something, I mean, I think that, to me, that might be, and I know we're sort of going into the general discussion on planning that I wanted to have, but thinking about what do we want to accomplish in the coming year, is that something that's important to us, is getting all of us, all the riders, better educated on what we can do to make this go quicker.
I think I mentioned before, maybe you weren't at the meeting, the wonderful ads that Emerson College has made for the subway riders. I don't know if you've seen any of them.
I have.
Oh, they're so funny.
Oh, are
And it
they?
does exactly that, you know, somebody will do exactly what you're not supposed to do, and they have costumes on sometimes, and I haven't seen them in the last week or so.
And these are print ads?
No, they're movies. You know those things in the thing that advertise Suffolk University?
Right.
Yeah,
Good example
no,
is
they're
taking-
fabulous.
They did one about taking your bag off when you're
Yeah.
on a
Oh.
busy train.
Right.
And I imagine that it was free for the MBTA because the student labor is often
Yeah.
free.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, maybe they paid for the,
Or we paid some, but it's.
but
not-
just for the thingy, you know.
Is
for
that
the
something that we should
video.
be trying to encourage in the coming year, getting more of that sort of awareness? And if we get, you know, we certainly college town, and there's a lot of talent and a lot of enthusiasm out there, and hopefully our riders, is that something that we want to sort of explore in the coming year?
Actually, I find, you know, I'm an old person, but I find the young people are more polite than the people
Oh,
40 and
absolutely.
above. I'm sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, the people who get up and give me the seats are
Right.
the people that you would think would be the last
Right,
people.
right.
And absolutely, that's very, very true. You know, so it would be nice if perhaps we could, you know, try to, I'll find those ads, and I would like to, you know, see if anybody has any thoughts about trying to get a little bit more of that, because the more buy-in we get from both the passengers, if we can also feel responsible for how quickly these trips go, everybody benefits from it. So I wonder who at Emerson, we had somebody last month here from Emerson, do you remember?
She was a reporter, I don't think
She was a
she would be the
reporter.
best person to ask.
Okay. Is anybody here from Emerson?
It's right down the street. It's like, it's within spitting distance of this.
Oh, I know, I pass by when I walk home every night,
Well,
so,
I mean, certainly, her having been here means we have a point of contact.
that's what I was
at the
thinking, why
school.
not just give her
I
a
mean,
buzz?
It doesn't hurt to ask if she
Yeah.
knows people in the media production.
Right, look,
Or the
she-
people that did that particular thing, they might
Sure.
be, you know.
Because that would be great to get something, you know, even some print ads for the buses or whatever, at least make these suggestions, see if there's, because it is a problem, the getting on and getting off is something that slows things down. What are your thoughts on that, Rob?
Certainly, public information campaigns, I think they have some utility. It's not really my
Right.
my department. Certainly, buses, if people who could alight at the back door, at the rear door, would do that. That would certainly speed bus operations.
I agree with you, but sometimes the bus is so crowded that if you're sitting closer to the front door, really by the time you get to the back, I totally agree. In a moderately filled bus, you should get an exit of the back door. But you should.
So it's just that buses that aren't crowded, so people can get off more efficiently. Because people, when things get too dense, people behave, you know, in less than ideal ways. You know,
That's very true.
You know, so it kind of creates bad behavior, you know, because they're trying to get out.
Stephanie?
I was gonna save this for later in the talking about planning ahead, but I don't want to lose the relevance of it. Considering that AFC 2.0 on buses is going to have tap on, but no tap off, right? There's no plan to tap off on a bus?
There will be the capability, but as of yet, there's no plan to do
Okay.
that.
Okay, so the
Automated
capability.
fare collection.
Right, but at least we know that it's going to be tap on at both doors.
Right.
I'm thinking that once we have that flow of data coupled with GPS for the first time, because right now the ridership counts and the GPS locations are, if I understand it right, still completely disconnected, and the only thing in common is time. So trying to go back and figure out what the loading was on a bus is a very difficult exercise, if I understand what, no?
We know ridership by stop.
Ridership by stop?
Yeah.
By
For-
trip.
On a trip?
Yeah.
Oh, as of,
Years.
Yeah, by years, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CPPS, you know, people go out and.
I play with the data.
no, you talk about the
APCs,
fare.
the automated passenger counting system that we have. I was just talking about earlier, like, that we have
Yeah.
on Arbor Way, all the buses and,
But you don't know where the people get off.
yeah.
How do you know where they get off?
Well, we know ons and offs at every bus stop. We don't have
We don't know where
origins
the-
and destinations of
Right, right.
individual trips.
Okay.
Right.
Though we do have, from the automated fare collection system, the origin destination transfer model
Mhm.
that does attempt
Yeah.
to model
Right.
those types of passenger flows.
Okay, well then, I apologize, I stand corrected, but going back to the contactless tap moving forward, that's gonna give even, if I'm not mistaken, more data points that might be able to help influence the crowding versus schedules. I mean, it's gonna be better data, we expect, right?
You know, we don't really use, you go back a couple, 5, 7 years ago, even more, 7, 8 years ago, when our automated passenger counting system wasn't as deployed as it is now, that we did try to rely on automatic fare collection data. It's never going to be quite as good as the APC information, just because it doesn't have a location of, it doesn't have an association with the stop information. Now, I don't know if the new system will. We'll be able to know at a particular stop
yeah.
how many people boarded and how many of them paid with student passes versus stored value versus a link pass or anything like that. Maybe, I'm not sure.
I thought that was part of it, C 2.0 was the GPS location of the transaction, I thought.
Well,
Multiple
but associating it with a trip, a particular trip on a bus at a particular time, I don't know. I mean, and quite honestly, for the purposes of what we do for planning, the type of information that you're getting from the AFC system is fare payment information. That doesn't really figure in so much to what we do. We're interested in passenger volumes.
Okay.
So just getting the count of the passenger is the most important thing. Now, that being said, if we can get better information on origin destination information, and that does come from the fare collection system. That is certainly a very useful planning tool, which we are in the genesis of using that right now with the current AFC system and the model that's been developed on origins and destinations and transfers with that. Undoubtedly, this new system is going to have the ability, if we use the tap on and tap off, to be a much better origin destination model.
Okay. Well, that was taking us down the rabbit hole, sorry, but
No, this is what we're
the
doing.
relevance to talking about boarding and blocking and bunching was that I thought that if we have that data in the future, then we'd be able to target specific, or the behavior of boarding and bunching might actually change. I mean, I'll leave it there. I mean, we're talking about future things. I was just thinking in terms of once AFC 2.0 is out for
Right.
6 to 9 months, then it might be a
And when is
completely
that?
different kind of boarding
When are they
pattern.
planning to deploy the AC 2.0?
2020.
2020, okay. It'll be here before we know it.
It will.
Oh, yeah. You know,
It's very
weeks
exciting.
pass like days. So that was, anything else on the subcommittee reports? I know we're just sort of melded into the general discussion on planning, because I think that, you know, what are some action items for the coming year? When I say year, I mean, you know, from now till the end of 2019, you know, we should really, I want to make sure that we're taking good advantage of our platform that we have, and that we're, you know, that we're giving the kind of input to the MBTA that will, you know, affect our riders and hopefully improve the process.
We're Brian here now, because yeah.
What was that?
We're Brian here now.
Oh,
so-
I'm sorry, Brian, I don't know everybody's name.
Oh, it's okay. For the, you want to
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
CF?
yeah.
Sure.
Great,
That's
that would
all
be
right.
great, sorry, I didn't know, I don't know where.
No worries. So we had another great guest organized by Len. We had David Perry from the Capital Delivery Department of the MBTA. So David came to the MBTA from a long career in the private sector as a consulting engineer. So he brought a lot of that experience into the team. He initially started in the commuter rail segment, but he will be very involved with AFC 2.0 going forward. So he talked about a few of the things going on. His role as capital delivery is really to oversee the contractors on the project, oversee the consultants on the project, make sure everything goes smoothly, make sure anything that comes up gets resolved moving forward. He did have fairly favorable comparisons to the process at the T, to his experience at the private sector, so that was good to hear. He did mention there are some additional costs working in the public sector, dealing with designs and dealing with meetings and things like that wouldn't happen in the private sector, but overall, I think his expectations were exceeded moving into the T. He did mention a few of the things that they're working on going forward are to improve the use of key performance indicators for capital projects, kind of building into a project analysis, a post-mortem, if you will, to say here's what we set out to do, how close are we to accomplishing our goals from a capital side, you know, from a spending side, and then also from an operations side. You know, do we solve the operational problem we're trying to by building this capital project? And that also gets into the work up front with capital charters and kind of thinking about what goes into a capital project before folks get started. He did mention a few hiccups along the way. So I think one of the examples that has been brought up by Arkady specifically was the Auburndale commuter rail station. And I think he echoed what Arkady had mentioned at the time, was there were some communication issues where this project was moving ahead, and some operational folks, when everything kind of came together, there was some, okay, well, if we do it this way, then operationally it'd be very difficult. So David also highlighted the need to get operational folks involved with capital projects early on, so that those types of issues are resolved. And he thought that was something he would focus on. going forward. He did stress that it's obviously tough, operational. They're dealing with their day-to-day job, so pulling them out into capital can be a problem. From a budget standpoint, he did mention a few times that there's a lot of money going to capital now, which I think has been a little different from years past, so that's definitely good to see. And the other thing that he did talk about a little bit is, so on some of the capital delivery, there's obviously a bit of a seesaw. On one end, you can have projects that are delivered quickly and at a lower cost, or the T tries to balance as best they can with impacts to the public. So I think a lot of the time the T is focused on limiting disruptions. I think there are some examples with Wallaston Government Center where there is a complete shutdown. That does save a lot of cost, but there is a balance. So there's definitely a lot of stakeholders involved. One of the things that I think from a subcommittee standpoint we'd like to do is try to keep a focus on those. It is tough, but we'd like to try to, where there's kind of an outsized impact, if you will, if there's a few stakeholders being vocal, but it would benefit the majority, we also want to keep cognizant eye on that. So those were notes from David Perry. I also wanted to mention that Len had done some work on the Focus 40. He distributed, I think, a letter out to some people for review, trying to get some comments to the T on that. And Karen, you were there. We also had a guest appearance from Len. But Karen, Len, anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So, with respect to near the end where he was talking about the tension between delivering a project quickly and minimizing disruption. And apparently there was a project, what, in Gloucester or something, where they needed to replace a bridge, and it would have been much faster, much less expensive, to just shut down service and do it. But apparently there was either a state rep or state senator, who complained very loudly about it, and stop that process. And now it's going to take much longer. It's going to be much more expensive to not disrupt the service as much in order to deliver it. Now, my response to that is that it's very good that our representatives are very responsive to us and can get things done on our behalf. But if a small number of people are able to cause a project to be much more expensive, then I would think it would be on that legislator, to work with his fellow legislators, to get the T more money, so that at least the T isn't taking a hit financially in order to minimize the disruption. There was another case, maybe about 10 years ago, I think, when the T needs to do a lot of work on the D line, and initially it started doing that work at nighttime. And this was a case where the abutters complained about the noise very loudly, and got the project stopped, or at least halted. And then what the T decided to do was, in order to minimize that, what they do is just shut the whole thing down, and bus people. Ended up taking much less time and being much less expensive. And by much less expensive, I'm talking, I think, in the tens of millions of dollars. For some reason, I'm thinking like $30 million less.
It ended up being much less expensive. In what they ended up doing.
And what they ended up doing, the way they did it, it cost less, and it took less time. But the cost
because they're not paying overtime, or
I can't tell you exact reasons why it
wow.
cost less. But the cost on the passenger side was that they shut down the line, so they were busing all day long. It wasn't simply a matter of doing that work at nighttime and not disrupting daytime services. Like, that was a major disruption. They were busing along a huge chunk of the D line for months. I want to say 6 months, but at least 3 months. And so now that was a case where there was a response to the outcry of the community, but it did lead to a less expensive cost, but at the cost of the passengers. So there's going to be that tension, and as I said, we want to do stuff that's going to cost more money, because we want to minimize the disruption, then we got to pay for it, and so we can't say, I want it to be easy and it's going to cost more, but I don't want to pay more money for it. That's just not going to work. And so that was that. The other thing is that one of the reasons that the team was having a hard time spending money was that there wasn't the people to spend the money. And the reason capital projects are going out the door faster now than they did before 2015, when we had the big snowstorm, and the Leo and all started saying, the T's got plenty of money, he's not spending money, and conflating that with operations as opposed to capital. Is like, the T has plenty of capital money, doesn't have operations money, which is a problem. But the reason the capital money wasn't getting out the door was because the T didn't have the employees who were coming from operations to spend the money wisely or to spend the money effectively. And so essentially he's kind of running into that problem now. Capital's getting out the door faster, but there still aren't enough people to get the capital out the door. And so they may not meet their goal for what they want to spend, but that's because they don't have the people, to help, manage the money, manage the projects. And it's becoming harder to get those people because there's a greater demand for them because the economy is so good. So it's hard to get them. And on top of that, apparently the T just has awful benefits. So I should say the medical, I guess, is comparable, to the private sector. But the vacation time, this was horrendous. Apparently, because of the contract that they signed with the union has a T, a person has to work a year before they accrue any vacation time at all. And that's like, really? Who wants to sign up for that? And apparently the pay's just not better, than the private sector. In fact, I guess it's probably worse. It's
I always thought the MBTA would have the best benefits in town. I always.
Yeah, and so the vacation time certainly isn't one of those benefits that's better. In fact, that to me would make me.
I think there's a difference between union, the carmen's union, the bus union, and what he's talking about,
right.
Engineering and more professional.
So
Yeah.
it's because I would hope that the bus drivers.
Oh yes, I think they're union.
Yeah, I think
and the
they're
carmen's
yeah.
union.
But it's the professionals that don't have the benefits.
Well, they have benefits, but it's not great benefits.
Wow.
And not benefits that makes one want to. I would imagine make one want to work for the T versus maybe somewhere else. Yeah. So that's what they're up against. And then capital is starting to cost more. Because there is the competition for resources because the economy is on the hot side, and then tariffs are throwing another little kink into a spanner into the works with respect to what you can anticipate in costs. And one of the things I was concerned about was that if as a bidder, that the T is hell bent on spending the money because of political reasons, people need to look good to say that we're spending this money because we're going to say that we're going to spend this money. Then what incentive do you have to bid low if the other party really wants to get the work out the door? So I think that's just something we need to be aware of when the powers that be go yelping about we're so good because we're spending this money. So I mean, it's like,
they're getting their money's worth.
yeah, and the deal though is that I really I want to come up with a negative word that isn't so abrasive, but I'm disheartened to a certain extent, that there is this conflation between capital and operations, because it really is operations that need money. And also, as Brian kind of mentioned, it's like, there are times when capital needs to interface with operations. And as Dave said, we can get all the employees that we want, on the capital side. The problem is we just can't hire enough. But operations is cut to the bone. So when you need to work with an operations person, either that person is just overworked and they can't, help out, or that person just isn't there because they can't hire the person. And so that's an issue because, we don't have capital money. And to compound that problem, to the extent that the T does get some money from the state legislature, 30 million of it is put into this lockbox, which is now put into capital. So that's like, money that could go, and that's called pay-go. So the T doesn't have to borrow money, in order to fund the capital projects, because like the state is giving it the money. And so the good thing about pay-go is that it has less restrictions with respect to how it's spent, because if you get money from the feds, there's a lot of restrictions on it. So it has fewer restrictions or none. But still, it's money that could be better used, I think, on the operations side, especially when you take into account that right now we have problems getting money out the door because of issues that are beyond the T's control. So that was that. But Dave was really good, and he and lots of other people. I think the fact that he works here and we have lots of people like him who work here where they could be in other places, it's a testament to how much they are committed to the T in transit, and there really are lots of people like that here who are just doing tremendous work in challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, I only was able to stay half an hour because I actually joined another group. I don't know how committed I will be. It's called RTAG, and it's an accessibility and senior people. So they're going to be meeting once a month, and they meet right here, actually. So Capitol, we usually meet in room 4, and this RTAG. And so there are a lot of handicapped people at the meeting. The ride probably will not be discussed. It will be about fixed route. So it'll be things, well, we consider the ride occasionally too. So just saying, if I learn anything interesting, I will bring it back.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds wonderful.
What do the letters stand for again?
It's RTAG, so I'm a TAG. I'm not sure. Probably maybe what does G stand for? I don't know. Anyway, it's
Group
gold people.
I just read about that yesterday.
All right.
So it's something to all people. I imagine that anybody could join it, but there were mostly people with handicaps there. And the meeting was not to discuss any issues. People kept trying to bring up issues. It was just to discuss the organization of the meeting, of the art.
Oh, so this is a new group.
A brand new group. They're getting, what's going away is ACT, I think, which was the group representing handicapped people, not old people.
I see.
So, not that us old people aren't also a little handicapped up here, maybe. Anyway, just saying. So I think the next meeting is, I can't remember, anyway, in November. There'll be a meeting at night, 5 to 7, 1 month, and then 3:30 to 5 or 3 to 5 another
Oh, that's
month.
good, so they can get a different group
Right.
in.
People,
That's
lots
great.
of both handicapped and elderly people don't like going out at night. Anyway, I will, if anything comes out of the next meeting, I can go out and
Interesting,
report
yeah.
back, if it's anything that we can use.
Thank you. Yes.
Riders Transportation Access Group.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And thankfully, it's pretty easy to find. If you go to mbta.com/accessibility, then you can find it on there. Or just Google for RTAG, and that's the first hit.
Oh, thank you for that. Anything more on the capital investment and finance? Okay, so I wanted to look at, again, some planning for the next year. So I did notice one thing, that when you, and maybe this is easy to take care of, or it could be one of those things that can never be fixed, that when you search for the MBTA ROC, that there are 2 websites, and one's a .com and one's a .org, and the .com is very, very old. And it has all of our meetings on a calendar for Mondays, and it should probably just be shut down, because there's an MBTA ROC.com that's just an old site.
I think we had somebody that we used to give him $1 or $2 to keep the website up. I think he.
Well, our website
Yeah.
looks good.
No, .com. I think so I don't even know who it is.
James is doing
Is it
both.
James
So
J?
James got it in his head, that it needs to be .org instead of .com. And so he just kind of left, the .com up as a relic, so I can get him to take it down or whatever.
Well, if you go to mbtaroc.com, it seamlessly redirects you to the .org. So we should powwow and see how you were finding that.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
on it today and.
Okay.
I've been on that one as
You've been
well.
on
It's
it
still,
too? The .com?
if you try going through Google rather than typing it in directly, you may get on it without getting redirected.
I see.
Okay. I'll look into that, because if we can find the pages, we can put in specific redirects for that, but definitely the .com is supposed to, no matter what you hit, supposed to take you
Okay.
to the .org.
I was able to get in it saying that it has a Google Calendar and the dates all the meetings are on Mondays. I don't know if they used to be on Mondays.
They did.
Okay, and so that's in there, and
okay.
some other, did you just find it?
I think
Stefan?
I found, yeah, this should be pretty easy to fix.
Who can I contact to get that?
James.
Okay, and then we need a little bit more information.
James he's one of the names when you get the executive committee,
Yeah.
invites, he's on it.
Okay, so can I ask him, what do I ask him to do?
Tell you what, let's talk tomorrow and I'll give you some of the techie details.
Thank you.
Either that or we'll just collectively email James, but yeah.
Perfect,
Yeah,
okay.
this is a absolutely solvable issue,
Right,
it's not a big
right.
deal.
Well, I
We
wanted to
have
pick up something that I could look like I
Could
was
you just,
solvable.
could you just do it, James?
Can I,
Can you just contact James on it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done.
Thanks.
I'll copy you.
So, and one thing that we sort of discussed earlier, and I wanted to discuss a little bit more, was our new members, where do we stand with them? Do we want more people involved? How do we get more people involved? I've only been on this for, 10 months at this point, and I know that there's some real, very solid people that are on the rock, and then we had some people with some really good enthusiasm, but I haven't seen them in a while. Now, granted, because of my own schedule, I haven't made it to any of these subcommittees meetings, which is too bad, because I really like the marketing communications one, and that should be easing up very, very shortly for me. But, so I don't know if they're going to the subcommittee meetings, but we had some good enthusiastic people here that, that I thought would help sort of relieve, the people here that are doing all the work, and I don't know where they stand, if we think they're gonna come back, if we don't think they're gonna come back. Do we want to get more people involved? Do we have a list from the last go-round of interviews? Is that something we should be thinking about, shouldn't be thinking about?
I'm of the opinion that there's no time like the present to go back to the last two people who were on the, I think there was two people left on the wait list, correct me if I'm wrong, and invite them or revisit them for another round of approval, but certainly we can go out and solicit more members if we're below our 15 goal.
If you guys, whoever was on the interviewing, if you think those folks would be great or good, they don't have to be great,
Right.
good in the round, I'd say.
Yeah, don't do another round of interview
Yeah,
with
no.
the two. If you've met them
Yeah.
and they were put on the wait list,
Yeah.
I think it would be nice to just reach out to them, and I can do that, or if it's just an email or whatever it is. I think that, if, I'd like to see a consensus, if you think that we should go ahead and do that at this time, or,
Yeah.
does anybody have a different thought on that?
I didn't realize there was a wait list, so I'm curious what the wait list was for and how people were on the wait list as opposed to invited.
It was more people than we had openings for. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did rank preferences, for lack of a better term, and the people that weren't ranked as highly were put on the wait list because nobody was viewed as being incompatible or not a good potential member, but we had to pick a certain number of people to match the number of seats. So there were two people that were put on the wait list, and I believe the consensus at the time was that when there were openings, those two people would be perfectly suitable to be invited to join.
Now, I don't know, do we actually, Lynn, from what you were saying earlier, do we actually have one opening then at this point?
And we have one, we have two, you know, I don't remember if we have like one person on the wait list, I mean, or two, I think it might be one, because I mean, I think one person that, we had, was going to join, decided not to, so
Oh, nice.
that left us with one, you know, that's why Phoebe came on board. So we may have one. So the only reason this works is because we have the openings, because otherwise we wouldn't just go over,
Right.
you know, the numbers
Right.
out, you know, dismissing, you know, the folks that who weren't in attendance. I mean, with respect to those who, they are not, to answer your question, they're not coming to the subcommittee meetings, so you're not seeing them here, we're not seeing them anywhere.
Okay.
And, my inclination, you know, is to give them another year,
Oh, don't give them a year.
you know,
Please, that's way too long. Get in touch with them saying, are you still interested?
well, yeah, get in touch with them and say, yeah, you haven't been attending, we'll give you another year, you know.
Not a year, Lynn. Why a year? A year for people that don't show up, they're just placeholders.
What if I sent an
well,
email and said, you know, we haven't seen you in a while, we wanna know, you know,
Yeah.
we enjoyed having you on the committee, and
Yeah,
we're hoping
make it
that we're
diplomatic.
gonna be seeing you again, and then this gives people an opportunity
Right.
to say, you know what, it's not my cup of tea, or my
Right.
job hours
Yeah.
changed, or it might, you know, but it could be nice and not saying like, where are you, but it could
Right.
just say, you know, we enjoyed having you on,
Yeah, well, that's
the
very
committee.
diplomatic, yes.
And maybe if I do that to the, just to the Rock email, will that reach everybody? Or is there a way for me to get everybody's emails without emailing everybody at once?
Yes, I can give you email addresses.
Or is it, can I pull that out of, I can probably pull that out of something.
I don't know if you can pull it out of the.
Okay, because that would be, or again, I don't mind just writing it to the general and not, you know, I don't wanna be picking on anybody, but I just, some of these people had so many great ideas, I'd love to
No, pick on
follow
them.
up.
Yeah.
Pick on them, but
I
in a
think your
diplomatic
idea to
way.
email people directly would be good, because if you email everyone,
Then,
people might not know who it's going to or whatnot.
Okay.
If you have direct email addresses and folks that haven't been
right,
around,
Right.
you can just, you know, I think it's a good idea to see what their intentions are.
right, just to check in,
Sure.
just to check in.
Not calling them out, like calling them in.
Right.
Yes.
Oh.
You win the diplomatic service award.
Always call you before you send me email.
But I do remember last, you know, it was tough to get applications in the last time we did it. It was also tough to get, you know, interview slots. I think Glenn handled a lot of it. So I remember that process was time consuming.
It's time consuming. I mean, it's not the first time that we've gone through a round of getting new members where, you know, it's hard to even get people to do an interview. So that's why it's like, give it another year, because it's like, I'm not going through that process.
Right, and I'm not,
Less
and
than a
I-
year. And let me just finish this thought. I mean, and the other thing is that I just don't think the return on the investment in time is worth it. I mean, which is why I am trying to come up with another way to get new members, because I don't think, you know, this like broadcast being to the general public is working, because I think people come in with good intentions, and as much as we undersell it, and we undersell it in a major way. I mean, it's like when we do an interview, we tell people this is an entity that has influence only, and don't come in expecting you're gonna change the world. We've exhausted a lot of the ideas that you have already, and it's a lot of work, you know, to get up to speed. It's just a lot of stuff going on. You're gonna come in, and it's like you're in a fast-moving river. You don't know where it's going, but you just know it's moving fast. And so it's not like we like tell them, you know, that we have given them expectations. So I just don't know if the model is working. And so I mean, I know people. So I'm thinking, you know, we kind of went for diversity. But it does us no good to have diversity if those diverse people aren't here. And a lot of other transit entities I see are not the most diverse groups at all, and that's an understatement. But at least the folks there, you know, they're there, you know, and they're working hard, you know, and so I just kind of go for those folks, you know. So that's it.
You know, I know that one thing that Jake and I were speaking about today was that there is, and he'll know better, an MBTA Facebook
or generally transit-oriented social media networks that are associated with Boston. It would be.
That's at least 6 the last time I made an account. Yeah.
I'm in some, so I think you would find some transit-oriented teens or folks who haven't necessarily interacted with government as much do that.
Yeah. And it seems that people interested in improving public transit are a very self-selecting group.
Right.
And on diversity is absolutely to be strived to achieve, but at the expense of not having participants.
Right.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, easy, huh?
So that's, and I'm not suggesting by any means that we start necessarily like asking people to leave or counting people or taking, attendance in that sort of punishing way. I was just wondering if, where we've got this great structural setup where the MBTA will listen to us, do we need more people with the enthusiasm? I know a couple people here were working on the college pass, the university pass, and I thought they were making some progress, and maybe it's just that they got caught up in something and an email from me saying, from one of us, it doesn't have to be me, but saying, how are you doing? We'd love to see you back.
Yeah, I guess, it's like, who does that work on? I guess I don't understand why we think that prodding, people who kind of know the responsibility is going to do any good. But maybe so.
But you don't know, maybe somebody will decide to come back. Maybe somebody feels like, oh, I've been there so long, it's too embarrassing to go back. Who knows what people think?
All right, I guess.
I don't think it's gonna hurt anybody, and I don't, and in
Sure
the,
not.
I would like to do that.
Sure.
If everybody thinks that that's at least a decent idea, if not a good one. Yeah.
With regard to making individual outreach from people that we know, I'd be very happy to approach people that I know personally who'd be interested in, or even to put it on my own personal Facebook page, because I know that I have got connections that are going to be completely different from anyone who'd be watching the Rock page or the Rock Twitter feed or even the MBTA website.
Now, right now, though, we have 2 openings and 1 person on a wait list. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that we're going to, shed a bunch of people immediately, but it would just be good to take the pulse and see if they're planning to come back.
Yeah, but there are 3 that we could shed immediately without any harm at all. I think if I took them off the MBTA ridership, the Rock group, that would be even notice.
Wow.
So that would give us 3. I would say, go ahead. And maybe like aim for a June start. You can give these folks the nice little tug on the leash. And if there's no response, then in June we just say thanks.
Right.
So long.
Okay. Does that sound good to you, to everybody?
Yeah. And certainly we can point them at the past meetings on YouTube, and of course they'll be so impressed with the video production quality that they'll just want to join to be part of such a group that's so technically on the ball.
Yeah, and the musical numbers are fantastic for anybody who hasn't watched the replays.
Right. But on a serious note, though, we picked 15 members somewhat, again, my recollection only, because it was more than a year ago. I think we picked 15 as sort of by throwing a dart at the wall, and at the time I think 21 seemed like too many, 12, or we were trying to go for a quorum breaking number, so would it be an odd number every time?
No, actually we went from 15 to 21, on the assumption that in any group only half of them are going to be really effective. So that we had like 10 to 11 or 21 functioning, we'd have a somewhat functional group, because cutting 15 in half gives you 8, and that was challenging. So we went to 21.
you're saying we currently have 21?
Yeah, that was,
Oh, I thought we only had 15.
yeah, it looks like that, doesn't it?
No, I really thought the total was 15. Okay. Sounds like a.
And anything, what other things would people like to see that we sort of accomplish? Just thinking in terms of, are there any items that anybody can think of that we would want to call the T's attention to in the coming year?
Yeah, so coming out of the meeting with Paul Regan from the MBTA Advisory Board, I was going to take this on personally, and I'm still willing to do so. The MBTA Advisory Board was essentially neutered. I can't remember exactly when. It's been more than 5 years ago, by the state senator. So essentially, they don't really have any teeth when it comes to commenting on the operations budget, and I'd like to see them get some of their power back, and so that there is more of a watchdog on the operations side of the ledger, and so find out what's going on with that and try and work with people in the legislature to see if we can get the MBTA Advisory Board a little more empowered, especially since we're going to have this transition as we move from the FMCB to something else. Not quite sure what that else is going to be, but I'd like that else to include the MBTA Advisory Board to the extent we can, it's appropriate. That's one reason I think it'd be good to maybe get Paul Regan when the chamber comes in.
Right.
Maybe not put that issue on the table, but at least get the MBTA Advisory Board like more out there, as an entity that is good for the T and good for watching its budget.
And how many people make up the advisory board, do you know?
I don't know.
Or who's on, or
I just know the executive director.
what it's comprised of?
Let's see if I can find it right now.
And so.
Oh, well, I didn't know that they have mbtaadvisoryboard.org.
Yeah.
That's new to me.
Yeah. They represent a lot of communities, that are part of the MBTA service area. In fact, I guess they represent all of them, but I don't know how many members are actually on the advisory board. I do know that the advisory board sits on the Boston MPO, and so they do have input, at least in that respect, into transportation on the regional level. Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, I'm literally reading the opening paragraph of MBTA Advisory Board about us, quoting here, the chief elected official of each of the 175 cities and towns in the district, or his or her designee, is a voting member.
Wow.
So that's to be taken literally. That means there are 175 at least members of the MBTA Advisory Board. I didn't know that.
And then what was it that neutered them? You said their power was sort of.
There was some legislation, I'm not quite sure when, it was
Right.
passed, that essentially, it removed a lot or most of their power with respect to the MBTA operating budget. I'm not quite sure what power they had beforehand, but essentially Paul has told us that, they have little to no power now. When they do their report, that's not quite the right word, but the MBTA proposes a draft budget, and then the advisory board is supposed to comment on that budget. That's all it is. So if they have a problem with the MBTA's budget, the MBTA doesn't have to do anything about it.
Okay. Well, that would be important because really the operations budget would make a huge, already just getting the approval from more drivers is helping significantly. That's a good thing to look at.
Yeah, so I'll take that on, and I'll keep people updated. I'm waiting until the election, so after the election, it'll be clear, who's what,
Right.
At least who's around, and then the legislature, I'm not quite sure when that starts, but then, the chairs and all will be determined for the implementation committee, and then once that's set, then start, talking with people. So they'll get to know me in the State House a little bit.
Great. Any other ideas? Anything else that somebody would like to do?
I have my usual bus operations, like attention to bus operations and dispatching and staffing. I keep hearing little bits of things that are changing or work towards. Like Better Bus Project is certainly going on, and some of that I understand will be operational or dispatching. Policies or procedures or tools, or is that a fair statement that that's part of what Better Bus Project is looking at, or an aspect of it?
A distinct aspect. I would say probably the thing that you'd be more interested in would be the implementation that we're doing of a new module for our scheduling software.
Okay.
Hastis is our scheduling software, and they have a module that is called Daily that is used for operations and dispatch. Right now it's a paper system that we use. So they're implementing that as we speak right now, rolling it out garage by garage, and it will fundamentally change the way that the dispatch is handled. So I'm happy to put you in touch with people who, or anybody at the Rock who would like to learn more about that. They go out and they do presentations, certainly to all the garages. I'm sure they'd be happy to come and talk to you about it.
Come here.
Yeah.
For the general meeting, that would be, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. It's definitely something that's very much in the weeds.
Okay.
And it will have, the only impact that it's really going to have for service planning, as far as I understand it, is that it'll give us better information on drop trips, which will be very useful. But aside from that, it's largely an operational tool.
Oh, good. So you can put it. So that would be great if I could get some information of who to contact and get a presentation.
I'll reach out.
I don't think, I don't think that occasionally going deep down into the weeds is a bad thing. I was just flashing back in my mind to when the Riverside line was pretty much shut down for a long period of time to have track replaced. I remember, at least in the subcommittee and briefly in I think the full committee, we were talking about the finer points of how rail attaches to ties and the spiking process and the profile. I mean, we have gone down in the weeds when it's been interesting, at very least, to other committee members.
And that was a project where they ended up shutting down the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was the one I was
Okay.
talking about. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in terms of planning, Stefan?
My pet project is all of the real-time data and technology advancements that are coming out, I believe driven by the CTO office, David Block-Schachter. The wayfinding with Bluetooth is particularly interesting to me. The augmenting of real-time data with, for lack of a better term, models of stations in the GTFS data is very interesting to me, because I think we might actually not be too far away from being able to have someone who's, for example, visually impaired, be able to find their way through a station for the first time with an electronic assistant guiding them. I don't know if that's years away or several years or not, but that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be watching. And sort of as a corollary to that, the refinement to real-time data. Case in point, they just, for the first time since the advent of real-time bus tracking, they ditched the vendor Next Bus in favor of Swiftly, an entirely different predictions provider and that's expected to increase the accuracy of real-time predictions by something. I think they were getting 75% accuracy from Nextbus, and they were expecting 85% accuracy from Swiftly, or they are getting that amount of increased accuracy. So that's another aspect of the data that I'll be following.
Can I ask you a question? I can't use Nextbus anymore.
Right, it's gone. It's dead. They're out of the picture.
Can I use Swiftly for anything?
To the best of my knowledge, Swiftly doesn't provide any app or anything directly to the consumer. It's all going to go through a third-party app.
So I can't call the number and get.
I haven't found one yet, but it doesn't mean that it won't be done in the future. I'm keeping my ear to the ground on that.
Is it swiftly.com or what is it?
Probably.
Or Swift.ly.
What was that?
Or Swift.ly, maybe.
You're making it up.
No.
Okay.
It is Swiftly. I've used it a little bit. They have some interfaces that you can look at the data.
Pretty close. It is GoSwift.ly. So GoSwift.ly.
Oh, .ly.
Yep.
GoSwift.ly.
GoSwift.ly. Yeah, Go Swiftly with a period before the last
But no
letter.
com?
No com. No. .ly is a valid top level domain.
Oh.
So they're
Who
yeah.
uses LY?
Good guess, Carl.
That was very
Who
well done.
what domains use LY?
Anything whose company name ends with an LY theoretically can buy the
Oh.
domain.
So it isn't like all transit or all that?
Nope, it's just another
All LYs.
available, yeah.
It's the country code for Libya,
Oh,
Libya.
whoa.
but people use it as a,
Yeah.
just like that TV is.
LY for Libya? Oh, yes, of course, duh.
That's surprisingly new information.
Maybe they're doing a tax dodge. Excuse me, I erased that, I didn't say that.
It's too late.
It's streamed out.
And for what it's worth, another pet project I'm following is the positive train control on commuter rail. I don't think there's really much to be investigated or to give oversight. It seems like it's coming along. I think they applied for an extension because at this point they're not going to meet the end of 2018 deadline. If they don't meet the 2018 deadline, end of this calendar year deadline without an extension granted, it's big bucks. I haven't looked into that in a month or two, but again, positive train control on commuter rail is federally mandated unless you get an extension.
Can we find that out from the T? Is there somebody who could ask at the T?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while, but I'll hit the Googles and I know people I can ask.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Is it pulling their hair out or they're gonna ask for an extension?
I know they did file for an extension. I just don't remember if it was granted or not.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting and useful to hear about the municipal work on bus lanes or bus changes to streets to make buses work better. So when Cambridge, I can't remember her name right now.
Oh, right.
When she came in and
Take it.
So not necessarily to invite her back, but when we hopefully will be hearing about more of those projects and or maybe the results of what Peggy spoke about.
Sure.
I think the results would be interesting because then that gives us a place to then, perhaps get in touch with the T and give our thoughts on that. Once we've got some of the results, it would be very interesting.
Aim for that in like March or April. Arlington's wrapping.
You do have me, and I'm involved in all those, so I'm happy to talk about any of those that you
Thank
talk
you.
about.
And the project I'm working on at CTPS is transit signal priority.
Excellent.
Oh, and is that moved? Could you tell us how far along that's come?
The project is what we've sort of done is interviewed municipalities for their experience with TSP planning and implementation. Cambridge is one, Watertown's another, City of Boston's another. And we're sort of wrapping our heads around the various architectures and the ways that we can implement it and where it might be best to do it. The ultimate goal of the project is a guidebook that will sort of lay out, if you're a municipality and you want TSP, that's what you need to read to be able to implement that. And it's a big project. Implementing TSP is a big project that there hasn't been a lot of centralized guidance, and so that's one goal of this report.
This is one of the MBO's
Yes.
studies.
Yes.
Thank you. So we're coming up right on about 6:30.
Then I would also just say, I mean, I certainly hope The Rock is going to weigh in on the Better Bus project, the ideas that are going to be coming out, hopefully in December, of service changes that we're going to be proposing. So,
Good.
wouldn't expect you not to.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a nice way of putting it. We will, Rob.
Yeah.
The annual just budgeting and capital planning. Like, we have been involved in that before. I expect we would again.
Yes, of course. Trying to get involved early in the process.
Yeah.
Great. And we do not have minutes to approve tonight. Jake has done a great job on them, but they still need a little bit of work.
Yeah, I forgot to add the attendance, although I think I finalized everything else today, actually.
Did you good? Yeah, thanks. We spoke this morning, but everything, Jake's doing a great job in the minutes, and so with everyone's permission, we'll put off the approval of these minutes till the next meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah. So I think you wanted to say?
Just a question, because I can't remember what was the interval going to be, or what's the time frame for the next fare increase or fare policy revamp? Was that tied loosely or strongly to AFC 2.0? Was it going to be sort of tabled? Was fare structure changes going to be tabled until AFC 2.0 was fully out there? I don't remember.
The bit that I do remember is that they only wanted to do one more with the current hardware and systems. And so, for a number of reasons last year, I think they basically said, we had an opportunity, we'll postpone the opportunity, and then by the time we have another opportunity, the new fare collection system will be in place. So I think it's calendar 2019 that they'll be considering it.
My recollection is that. Go ahead. I thought you were done.
That's news to me.
Oh,
If that's
maybe I totally misremember that.
My recollection was that the last fare increase was higher than people were expecting it to be, and the T said that we're going to do this higher fare increase, but we won't do one for 3 years, because the plan was to do every 2 years, be at a certain rate, and that rate was higher than people were expecting, and so they said we need money, but we won't come back for 3 years for what that's worth.
So I know that the AFC team is going out now and doing public meetings on the implementation of AFC 2.0. Just by virtue of seeing one of those presentations, I know that they're looking at fare structure, and when you talk about structure, it's going to be pricing that just goes hand in hand with it. I don't think there is a whole scale, at least from my understanding, there's not an effort to increase revenue as part of the AFC 2.0 rollout, but there have been no final decisions as far as I understand. I think it would be great for that AFC 2.0 team to come and give you guys the presentation that I saw. Be an opportunity for you all to see that. So if you'd like me to reach out to the AFC office and put the person who's in charge of public outreach in touch with you, I'd be happy to do that.
You said Lauren?
Oh, along those lines.
Yeah, Laurel?
Under Laurel's
Okay, yeah.
Office, yeah.
Along those lines, I just checked the calendar, and next month's meeting would be scheduled, oh, sorry.
On 27th.
No, it'll be, yeah, will be the week of Thanksgiving.
That's
The Tuesday
about-
Is that
after.
okay?
It's
The Tuesday after six.
after Thanksgiving.
So we're having Tuesday after?
Yes.
Okay, and then, the other one was, December. Do we want that Christmas week?
And it's gonna be before the Christmas week.
Yeah, it's before.
Yeah.
It would be the week before Christmas
Yeah.
week?
Yes.
Okay.
Schedule came out last year.
Yeah, I would have
So it'd be the 18th
Yes.
then?
Yes, we were not.
Yeah, December 18 and
We're not meeting on Christmas Day. Yeah.
No, Christmas Day is Wednesday, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, we're not going to come in on Christmas, no matter when it is.
Christmas Eve, I guess it was, yeah.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
because we had a discussion.
Yeah.
So it's the, let me say that again for November.
27th,
Mhm.
it's the fourth Tuesday.
That's what I,
I'd like to see the GM here, and I think maybe some, even though we undersell it, I think if some people got to pose and do selfies with the GM and come to meetings, like, I got a selfie with the GM, but no, the GM really should come to these meetings. I know you guys.
I disagree, Lynn.
Well, that's fine. Let me finish my piece, and then you
Well,
can
it's
disagree.
just so
You can
many
disagree.
people here.
I'm gonna finish my piece. So the deal is that him and the Secretary of Transportation should come on some regular basis, and update us on what's going on, and recognize this entity for what we're trying to do to make the T better for the riders. And so he,
Is
part of the job.
General manager.
Yeah, general manager, being part of the job,
Yeah,
is
well.
interface with the public, not just, hire this customer experience person, so that's that.
I disagree. I think that we just have too few people here. I think it's, we're wasting his time. If he wants to send a delegate, or we want to publicize this meeting, that we get a lot of the public here. Stephanie Pollock, okay, she's been a public person. I think we can ask her to come, because I think she's been on our side of the fence. I think I would be ashamed to have him come here for such few people. I would feel awful.
Well, two things. One is that Stephanie Pollock's position is higher than his. So if that's the issue, then I would think you would be have the same argument for not having her here. The second is that,
I know that.
my second point is that I think it might draw more people. If they think he's gonna be here, to the extent
I
that.
think we would have to publicize it, and we'd have to do the work of getting people here. And we'd have to have, I would feel awful.
Well,
Because I know Stephanie from the old days.
yeah.
But I do not know this guy, so
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? So
And I think that, this group is whatever size this group is.
Right.
And I think that we can't really change, I hear what you're saying, and I have a lot of respect for it. But also, if this is the size of our group, then this is the size of our group.
Yes.
And we still should be having a voice, and we should be not only listening to what they have to say, but sort of getting some things, making them listen to
Right.
us.
then if we decide to go with that, and I'm not gonna fight it, then we have a whole bunch of questions that we send to him ahead of time.
Or topics, sure.
Whatever, that he doesn't come in blindsided.
Yep, that's what we used to do.
Right.
When the GM would come regularly, so this is not a foreign concept.
Yeah, but our
The
group
GM used to come regularly.
Yeah, but we used to be a bigger, better group.
Bigger,
Well, better too, because I think we tackle more things. There's lots of stuff we haven't done, and I'm kind of ashamed of how weak we are.
And maybe,
Not everybody here.
no,
But-
listen, you have to be able to speak, and I think that maybe by having them here, that'll give us some of our strength. I mean, if we're
Yeah.
weakening, I don't think that the answer is to just then be even weaker. I think that if we can start getting our voices heard and using, I mean, this is an amazing platform that we have, and we should be using it with the team, communicating with them.
Right.
And I think that, and I agree, like, we're not here to blindside anybody, and we would send the topics over, or even the questions, that's fine, or things that we want to discuss, but I think that the more that we can take advantage of our opportunity, the better off everybody's going to be, and we'll be able to look at some of our goals and actually work towards that.
Right. Because to the extent.
You know, that's just my thought.
Yeah, because to the extent that they don't show up, creates a negative feedback loop. We need to stop it. So that's
I
right.
said what I said. But
Right.
I'm one person, you know, this is a democracy, I'm one
Right.
person.
Right, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but we need to do something. Does anybody want to talk about any external meetings, old
Yes.
business, new business?
External meetings, there were a bunch of them this month. We had 2 MPO meetings, RTAC meeting, and then another MPO certification meeting. And so the MTO meetings were really good. I can pull up the first one in beginning of March. I would suggest that anyone interested in transportation and transit just go and read the minutes, because you get a better sense of the big transportation picture in which transit resides. And it may not seem relevant at the time, but that kind of basic knowledge just comes in handy when it comes to just trying to understand some of the issues that can affect transit. So, for instance, if one of the topics was on warehouses, and where they're placed, and how they affect traffic. And one of my big things is we need to get the cars off the road so buses can work better. But if you take the cars off the road, but you replace it with a whole bunch of trucks because of the way the warehouses are set up, that may not help your transportation at all. I'm kind of stretching the example, but it's just one of those cases where you would not think that warehouses could affect the transit, but they affect what's on the road because these trucks are on the road, so that kind of stuff. But there was one project on the pedestrian report card assessment dashboard. So for those of us who are walking to our T stations, that might be something we want to pay attention to. The disparate impact and disproportionate burden policy development update was presented, and that's what we were participating in during the summer. And so the recommendation of that group was that when it comes to evaluating the long-range transportation plan, when they do the analysis, there is any difference between the impacts on disparate on minorities to disparate impact, or disproportionate burden on minority groups, that we would look at it. So we didn't want a threshold, we just wanted any difference at all. And the rationale was that there is so much, the margin of error is so large when you go out 20 years, that if anything popped out, then we want to take a look at it. And the MPO staff is going to recommend that there be a threshold, but they haven't determined what that threshold is going to be. And I think initially there's just going to be a kind of global threshold, but later on they're going to try and establish thresholds for various components. For instance, the particulates may have a different threshold than the access to jobs. So that was that one. There's a second MPO meeting. I'm not going to go through it right now. I can pull it up on my phone really quickly. There was an RTAC meeting, Regional Transportation Advisory Council, and just for those who don't know, the RTAC sits on the MPO, so that's a way that we get to feed into the MPO. And so Scott Hamway, who came to our last meeting, he presented on Rail Vision, and I guess it's it's an update, not the draft or anything. And there was discussion about what's going to go into the long-range transportation plan. And I went to the certification meeting for the MPO, and I spoke, but I didn't speak as a representative for the ROC. I just kind of spoke and said, well, I'm on the ROC and on the RTAC, and just it was good to see other people who are considered stakeholders at that meeting and what they had to say about the MPO. Two comments were the MPO kind of rubber stamps the MBTA's capital investment plan. And guess who made that one? And the other one was extension. They had shrunk the comment period for most of the documents, the drafts, meaning from 4 weeks to 3 weeks. Everyone wants that expanded back because most of the groups meet on a monthly basis, and 3 weeks really isn't enough time to make a comment. I actually pushed for 30 days because, you kind of need a month. I really want to push for 6 weeks, but that was just going too far. And interestingly, there was another group there, Livable Streets, who had heard about the recommendation from the staff MPO about the threshold, and they were opposed to that. But the folks from the feds, I think it's an interesting process, that recertification process. They take it seriously, and I don't know if there's still a comment period for the certification process. But if there is, you have something to say, then by all means, say it. And so, and I guess if there is still a comment period, you go to the Boston MPO, that worksite, and they would link you to the comments. So that's it.
I'm glad you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned the warehouse locations affecting truck traffic and vehicular traffic. On a somewhat related note, but more on rail, the 2017. Well, if you didn't already know, the state puts out a periodic freight rail plan. The 2017 freight rail plan looks like it was actually just released in September of this year, but it's called the 2017 Massachusetts Freight Rail Plan. If you just Google for those terms, you'll find it. It's a 143-page document that is more comprehensive. It is comprehensive beyond what I would have ever expected. I haven't brought it up in here because it's freight, but to the extent that getting things off the roads and onto rail freight is good for everybody, it may have an effect on making roads less congested to the benefit of buses or autonomous vehicles. I think that's for what it's worth.
That was funny that you were sending it in that direction. I thought of it coming the other direction, so that the rail comes in, and then you get the stuff off the rail, and then you have to distribute it, So I thought that it's mostly, but it's going out. So you see the freight, this rail plan for freight going out more so than freight coming in.
I actually haven't read the whole thing.
All right.
So
I'm just curious.
I don't know.
I'm sure it's going in both directions, but
yeah.
I'm wondering if there's one direction more than another, because does stuff come out of the port?
Only they come in containers.
I'll send out the link to the report. Sorry, just a quick note. I'll send out 2 links because they do a good job. Not only is there the 143-page PDF, which is a huge download, they also have it in sort of an interactive, page viewer format, so that if you're on a mobile device or if you're on a low bandwidth thing, you can actually read the whole thing without having to download this massive thing. So I'll send both links out to the group.
Cool. Thanks.
I went on a tour of Boston Harbor last week, and there's apparently 24-hour dredging to make it deep enough to have these gigantic new ships coming in, and I'm sure they will be loaded with containers, which will then go right onto a truck and go out. So the port will become probably busier.
Yep.
So and all that freight probably won't be going to Boston. Some of it obviously will, but it will be going Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut. maybe, well, Connecticut might go through New York.
Okay, any other, external meetings, old business, new business?
New business, we need, in my office, the dates going all the way through 2019 to get the room.
I gave you that.
Oh, yeah.
You should have that.
Yeah, I sent you that, because I was gonna ask you, did you get our rooms? I sent you that, you know?
I'll have to double check that, I'm so sorry then.
Yeah, no problem. Because when you asked for it, it's like, I was glad you asked for it because I was gonna start that process.
Yeah, I
Just
got asked
once,
about it
you know?
again recently,
Huh?
so I'll make sure that
Yeah.
I got everywhere I should have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because we want to start setting those rooms aside, early this month so that we can have them, so yeah, I was gonna talk to you after the meeting because I hadn't heard from you about it, okay? All right, let me just make sure that's on it, all right.
I'm sure you sent it.
Sure.
Would you also be able to make sure the MBTA.com event list has all of 2019 as well?
I will make a note of that, follow.
Trish helped facilitate that.
Yeah, I'm gonna send, I'm
Yeah, that's
gonna
why
send
I've gone
it to
through
you
it.
right
Yeah.
now, for the meeting schedules.
Great.
You got it?
Yeah.
You got it?
I did,
Yeah.
yeah, so let me just send it to,
Was he on the list?
I'm sure you didn't, it must have been my fault.
I'm not gonna answer that.
I think it was on there.
Yeah, I just sent it to you, so. Okay, anything else, or should we move on to, is there anybody here, are you here from the public for a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, it was on the three things thread. It was the three things thread.
Okay, three things.
I just sent it to you too. Shall we move on to public comments? Okay, did you have a public comment tonight?
Yeah, I mean, is anyone else here for public comment? No.
There are some other, I don't know if you're here for public comment.
No, I'm a urban planning student at MIT.
We're in
Do
the
you
same
know where
program.
they are?
Yeah, we're in the same program.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Sure.
No obligation. I mean, but
Yeah,
no,
you
we're
can say no.
Yeah, sure. No, I just started. I'm a first year MCP. Most of my background is in environmental law and policy and climate mitigation, and I'm really interested in public transit, and alternatives to single passenger vehicles as well. I'm from Los Angeles originally, so this is near and dear to my heart. And I don't know that I'm working on any applied projects specifically right now, but one that might be of interest is as a research assistant, I am researching cybersecurity for critical urban infrastructure. So looking at ways that energy utilities and water utilities and transit systems and so on protect themselves from cyber attack and are preparing for it. So that's sort of tangential to this particular body, but this is a field that I'm really interested in. So both here out of personal interest and out of academic
Do you live in
application.
Boston?
I live in Cambridge.
Oh, what Boston area?
Yeah, right near Cambridgeport, right on the 41 line? Right by the
No, no,
47.
not 41.
I'm not sure. I walked.
47.
I walked campus.
There's gonna be a diversion starting next week.
Yeah. 47, right by the Trader Joe's and the Shell sign,
Yep.
and Memorial Drive.
Oh, I know right where you are. Yeah, great, thank you.
And Micro Center.
Right. This might not be I'm not sure if this is within this body's purview, but it pertains more to the connectivity of bike paths. And I've noticed that I really like riding my bike from my place in Cambridgeport to campus along the river, and the path stops, or the bike path stops, I'm not even sure what the right vocabulary for this is, along Memorial Drive, right before the I guess like Magazine Street connectivity, and it's right by the Boston University Bridge.
Yeah.
Just to the east of that, there's about 150-yard stretch where all the bikes and pedestrians have to hop up onto the curb together, and you can ride in the street as a bike, but you have to go pretty far down along a very inhospitable pathway just to get back onto the bikeway later. So that's an opportunity for improved connectivity. Again, I'm not sure if that's within the purview, but it's something that.
No, but we care about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we care.
I thought there was something going on with that bridge, that they were gonna redo something over there. Don't you think they would be redoing it with the bicyclists involved?
Would certainly hope so.
I mean, there's a strong bike group.
Mhm.
I've forgotten what it's called. I get emails from them all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. But they lobby for all this kind of thing.
Thank you. And did you have a comment?
Sure. So just point of order. I mean, can I kind of recommend that this body, can I bring up some comments,
Sure.
ideas?
Yeah,
And then
sure.
you'll, at a later meeting, you'll deliberate whether you want to bring this up to the MBTA formally? Is that kind of how it works?
Whatever. We
Yeah.
might even do it
And what is
right
your
now.
name?
David Senatore.
Did you sign in?
Yes, I did.
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
And where
thank you.
do you live?
Malden.
Okay, great.
So, one thing with bus service schedules, and I made a comment this week, maybe several months ago, but it's kind of relevant now with the Better Bus study, is my personal recommendation is we have a weekday schedule, we have a Saturday, and we have a Sunday schedule. So essentially three different schedules of buses.
Right.
You know, I really kind of thought about it deeply and really looked at it. It just seems like it's kind of arbitrary and capricious why you have different levels of service for Sunday and Saturday. I mean, it seems like there's puritanical roots there. It seems like there's, for example, several of the buses that I use on a regular basis, most of them have higher frequency on Saturday, but there's actually a few that have higher frequency on Sunday. And there's no real rhyme or reason. So I think my recommendation to the T, and I hope this body might consider this, pushing this, is just have a weekend schedule. Don't have a Saturday and Sunday. It's hard to remember. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's very confusing. Most people that work on weekends work both weekends, and they have things to do on both days. They don't simply choose not to go out on Sundays. There's huge holes in service where you can get to where you have to go 6 days a week, but if you're on a Sunday, you're SOL, out of luck. So my recommendation would be, if need be, if Saturday service is greater and Sunday service is less, and data shows that we don't need as much service, I'm fine with decreasing service in some areas. But overall, I just believe service should be the same Saturday and Sunday. I can't really see a reason why. It's just very confusing, especially for a visitor, someone who's coming to the city. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I work with people that essentially have to take rideshare on Sundays just because they can't get to where they have to get to.
Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, we've talked about it.
Oh, okay, I'm
But
sorry.
I'm happy
Okay.
to talk about it here. So yes, I mean, the reason that we have less service on Sunday is a function of demand. In terms of the point about some services should be the same on Saturday and Sunday, we actually do have a fair number of services that do that. All key bus routes have the same frequency on Saturday and Sunday. Certainly, if we were to try and equalize the amount of service on Saturday and Sunday in a resource-neutral environment, that means increased service on Saturday, or increased service on Sunday would have to come out of service somewhere else, be that on Saturday or on the off-peak on weekdays or something like that. We'd have to use the operators that we would need to use for service hours on Sunday, and they'd have to come from somewhere else. So everything's a trade-off, a give and take. And it all really just comes down to, as is often the case when we're making decisions about how we distribute resources, it's based off of ridership and demand. And we definitely see a drop-off in ridership on Sunday. One could argue that demand is a function of supply in some respects, but it's really it'd be hard to argue against putting more resources on Sunday service and taking them away from Saturday service when there's more ridership there, or weekday off-peak service when there's more ridership there.
I mean, not to, I don't wanna go back and forth, but, I mean, I think what you previously said was exactly right. I think looking at general riders, I think we've come to expect lower levels of service on Sundays. So sometimes we don't even consider the MBTA as an option. You know, we just say, I'm gonna find a different way of getting to where I have to go because everything runs slower. There's huge holes in service. One example is, a lot of times on a weekend, I'll actually go from the vicinity of Reservoir to Forest Hills. Now I have to go all the way to Boston and all the way back because the 51 bus simply doesn't run on a Sunday. So I mean, so I'll choose rideshare, I'll choose a taxi because I don't depend on the T on Sundays because I've come to expect that I'm not going to have good service. So you know, so I think this is kind of like a case of putting the cart before the horse. That makes sense, I guess. You know, so there's definitely you know, if you build it, he will come adage. I think applies here. But yeah, no, I mean it's something to look at. The other thing is, let's see. One thing that's happening, and I especially see this at Sullivan Station, but it happens in other stations too, is folks will be waiting for a bus, especially on off-peak, late nights, early mornings, holidays, weekends. Folks will be waiting for a bus. They will get on a bus, and the bus operator will actually, due to safety concerns, will have to stop people from getting on the bus and say, look, we're over capacity, we're at capacity, you have to wait for the next one. And I understand that happens. The problem is, this doesn't seem like there's any contingency plan. The bus inspectors are not empowered or don't have the resources to pull an extra bus, an extra operator, and pick up those people. Now, in the case of 104, 109, you might have one bus an hour on a weekend, a holiday, off peak in the wintertime, and it becomes a situation where people will kind of self-queue, and they'll actually like almost get into shoving matches to get on that bus, because if you don't get on that one bus, you may have to wait up to an hour for the next bus with limited shelter. So I understand you can't have a limited number of buses, but specifically when you have people that have been waiting at the station endpoint and they can't get on, physically cannot get onto a bus, I think the inspectors or senior bus operators there should be some kind of empowerment where another bus can be pulled to pick up those people to run. And I don't see that happening. We're also turning away. I mean, I think we owe that to our riders to give them that level of service. But it's also a financial situation too. We're losing revenue because those people aren't going to wait an extra hour, so they're just going to take an alternative method. Some will wait, some won't. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. What else? For an individual project, there's I think there's part of Focus 40. Any comments on this? But it seems I haven't heard too much about it, and I'm wondering if this group would be willing to push the River's Edge infill station. Now, it happens to be my neck of the woods, so it's a potential infill station on the Orange Line it would actually sit on the Medford-Malden line. It would essentially be equidistant between Wellington Station and Malden Station. And it would actually, I think it was part of the, it was vetted through the Everett Transit Action Plan a couple years ago, and I think it made it to Focus 2040. But I think it's been given a lower priority, if I remember right. So it's an infill station, which, from what I understand, it's a lower cost than essentially doing new right of way and new tracks and everything. It would open up a huge swath of Medford to bring new riders, and I think they had relatively high estimated generating new ridership. And there's a twin project with that the city of Everett is pushing, would be a bike and pedestrian bridge over the Malden River to connect West Everett to that station on the Malden Medford line. So that's another project that I hope we can push on. Inner harbor boats, I think that's a huge area of opportunity. One thing I noticed was we had last summer and the summer before we had Fleet Week, we had a bunch of high profile events in the city, and the commuter boats actually just stopped running at a very early time, maybe 7 p.m. So there was no like kind of increased level of inner harbor commuter boat service to coincide with all these like amazing events that were going on in the Boston Harbor area. So I remember I got on the very last commuter boat. It was Fleet Week, and I got on the very last commuter boat. It was a beautiful July evening, and the last one was I think at like 6:55 or 7 p.m. And there were all these people waiting on the dock to get on to the next one, and they said, "Sorry, we're not running any more boats because that's the schedule." So I just think that the T could coordinate better with. I think it's Boston Harbor Cruises that subcontracted to run that. It also doesn't seem like on the commuter boat, which I take from time to time, it doesn't seem like it actually collecting any data. A lot of times I have like a 1A pass, and I'll kind of flash it, and they'll say, "Okay, you're all set." And I've actually asked the question, "Are you logging this?" I said, "No, you're all set. You have a pass." And it didn't seem that the boat operator was actually taking a tally of how many people were going on. Now, I may be wrong. There may be someone with a counter going around, but from what I saw, there's no data being collected. So if there's no data being collected, how can we push for more service?
7:03.
It is, yeah, we're getting to the end of it, can you make it to our next meeting, which is not gonna be, it's gonna be on, it's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, can you do that?
I'll make every attempt to.
Okay, because I'll tell you, we do the public comments starting at 5:05.
Sounds good.
And we do them again at 6:50, and we'd love to have you back.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yes, sounds good, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
And a second, well,
Second.
okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I make a quick off the record? Totally, this is off the record, so nothing.